Roaming is one of the quickest and most efficient ways of snowballing a game out of control. We've all experienced the enemy Katarina getting a double kill on our bot lane and the game being an FF at 15. Well, in this guide, we're going to cover 9 easy tips that every challenger uses to ensure their roams are successful, so you can snowball your games exactly like that but way more often. Let's get right into it. Our first tip is the simplest yet most effective tip of them all. During a standard type of roam, you almost always want to push your wave before moving from your lane. Then you can commit to your roam and hope that it works out. The reason it's so important to push the wave prior to a roam is that it removes most negative outcomes from occurring. There's generally 2 things that can happen off a roam. You score a kill or you don't. Let's take a look at how that plays out if you didn't appropriately push the wave prior to the roam. 1. You score the kill but your opponent crashed the wave in the meantime. The kill is nice, but you're not as ahead as you could be since you missed an entire wave. 2. You don't score a kill and you miss the wave. Yeah, it's pretty bad. By simply pushing the wave before the roam, you can obviously remove that downside. If you score a kill, you're ahead a full kill worth of gold, and you can usually come back to mid in time to catch the next wave. And if you don't score a kill, well, you don't fall too far behind since you didn't sacrifice a wave to roam in the first place. Tip number 2 is to always try and gank your opponent from behind them and not straight through the river. By doing so, it makes it much harder for your opponents to react to your roam and makes kills much more consistent. You may be wondering, well, isn't that a bit dangerous? The jungler is likely to be in the way and you could just die, right? Well, that's generally a non-issue, especially in lower elo. Junglers don't really farm that well in the lower brackets and are usually weaker than they should be. As a mid laner, if you happen to run into the enemy jungler as you try and flank another lane, you can usually just kill them even in the worst circumstances possible. Our third tip is when you're against a more experienced player. Generally, a good counter to roaming type champions is a ward in the middle of the lane. Regardless of which way the enemy goes, you'll know exactly which lane they're ganking and can ping them to be careful. Well, just like before, you will want to clear this mid lane ward with a control ward since being pinged each time you leave lane isn't ideal. But the cool trick you can do here is to use the residual vision of the ward to trick your opponents as to where you're going. After you kill the ward, pass the opposite way you're going. 2 seconds later, turn around and go where you actually want to go. Few players actually use residual vision to trick the enemy, and people fall for it very consistently. Our fourth tip is to make sure you're using F keys or scanning lanes manually, whichever you're more comfortable with. Your roams will be much more successful if you know exactly what's going on in all 3 lanes. This is especially useful when you're in a matchup where you have permanent priority. Cho'Gath vs Kassadin is such a matchup. This game, Cho'Gath is spam shoving waves into Kassadin and always looking at his other lanes. Anytime he smells any action about to happen, he's pathing immediately towards there in hopes of helping his team score kills. It's not working a lot, but that's totally fine. You won't score a kill every time you scan the map successfully. Fights will usually be over by the time you've pushed the wave and started heading there. But the point is that your vigilance should eventually be rewarded, and by having knowledge of the fight beforehand, you can sometimes get there in time to make a meaningful impact on the outcome of the engagement. Our fifth tip is to sometimes look to freeze your wave before leaving for a roam. Obviously, this is completely opposite from our initial tip but very useful in specific circumstances. This game, Fizz is completely destroying the enemy Talon and zoning him from farming by freezing. But there's a wild Nunu in the river. As Fizz looks to path over there, he stops for a bit and makes sure to leash the wave just enough so that it continues to freeze. Although he doesn't get there in time for the kill, the reward is still the same. He can go back to lane and continue freezing and making Talon's life miserable. At least until Garen does that. Just keep in mind that there's a small difference between this type of roam and previous ones. Nunu was in the river, an area very close to mid. You should only freeze like Fizz did if the roam you want to do is short and won't take long. That way you can get back to your freeze in time. Otherwise, push the wave like we've seen in every other example. The sixth tip is to use your global ultimates reactively when looking to roam in low elo. When players think about global ultimates, they think about how they can force a ton of plays around the map with their teams to snowball the game. But watching too many Dopa VODs might disillusion you into thinking that it's going to work out like it does for him. That Lilia reacted very well to Dopa's ultimate and followed up appropriately. In the lower elo brackets, you're not gonna get such competent teammates, and more often than not, people will just watch you come in and not react at all. The solution is to just wait for your opponents to fully commit to a play before using your global. By waiting for them to commit, they have no way of getting out afterwards, making sure the kills are guaranteed. This may leave you wondering, what if my opponents just play safe and they never commit to a fight while I have my ultimate up? To which our response is that will absolutely never happen in low elo. No one ever plays around global cooldowns or teleports, so you're guaranteed to find opportunities where someone is overextending if you wait patiently enough. And that last kill transitions us into our 7th tip. Sometimes your teammate will die as you roam to help them. If the wave is still freezing towards them, you may want to consider leaving it frozen for them to catch back up. It's up to you and the specific game state you'll find yourself in. Taking all the waves after your roam is a great way of snowballing yourself, but does deny a lot of farm from your teammates. In this particular game, TF was already snowballing like crazy while his Nasus was down in the dumps. Since he doesn't need it, he leaves it for Nasus to TP2 to help him catch back up and not be completely useless the whole game. Tip number 8 is to clear vision on the side of the map that you plan to roam towards. You should always have a lane that you plan to play around more than the other. Usually, it's the more volatile lane where both sides are looking to fight constantly, or the lane that has good follow-up CC, which will help you secure kills. Either way, pick a lane at the start of the game that you'll be pathing to more often than the other. This game, Ryze has a Pyke support versus Aurel in bot lane. Whenever there's 2 melee engage supports in a game, you almost always want to path towards bottom as they're sure to be fighting constantly. Ryze takes a moment to clear out the enemy pink ward on the way to bottom, and he also noticed Orianna was very close to the side brush. You generally want to wait to place your control wards when you see your opponent place theirs. That way, you can be sure to clear all their vision, which should make your roams more consistent. Ryze places his control ward down, finding the obviously placed ward and clears it after he trades with Orianna. With all that vision cleared, it enables Ryze to rotate over towards bot lane a bit later. His prior efforts have this area completely dark for the enemy team, and he's able to help his team secure 2 kills.
Before we continue, we just want to make sure you guys all know where this guide came from. Skill-capped. It's the best place to be if you actually want to improve at League of Legends. We have the best and the most League of Legends guides on the internet that really do work. The best part is you don't have to take our word for it. If you don't climb 5 divisions while actively using skill-capped, you can claim a refund, so give it a shot and get the rank you've always wanted for Season 11. Check us out after this.
Although you definitely want to make sure your roams aren't being spotted by your opponents, being seen shouldn't deter you from committing to a roam that seems incredibly free. Low elo players have both bad map awareness and don't react to plays appropriately. More often than not, a bit of persistence will net you kills. For example, Fizz rotates over to Dragon and helps Mundo score a kill on the Nunu who was trying to steal it. It should be very obvious that Fizz is in this area to the enemy team. Despite that information, the enemy Samira continues to play up in the lane without seeing Fizz back in mid. Fizz, knowing that low elo players don't respect missing people, stays and scores an easy kill for his team. As another example, in this game, Yone scores a kill on the enemy TF over the Raptor wall. Once again, it should be very clear to the enemy team that Yone should now be pushing mid for turret plates. But Yone has other plans and is making his way to top lane, knowing that the low-ish health Camille won't respect the roam whatsoever. The dive is incredibly scuffed, but you know what? We take those. Regardless of the mechanics involved there, the point remains that Camille should have very easily known she was about to be dove, and should have retreated until she saw Yone on the map again. Alright guys, that was the final tip and the conclusion to this guide. We hope this helps make your roams more successful, and good luck out on the Rift. See you next time!